Hello, Brian. How are you? Nice to see you. Thanks very much for a very jolly interview. As you can see, it's a bit busy around here today because we're at Big Finish Day. But I wish you all the very best, and I hope the podcasts keep going. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Small Guy. Oh, there's Tim joining us a little bit late. Yeah, we've gathered today to sit down and have a small Q&A session with Lisa Bowerman. How do you describe her in just a small set of words? Come on, cheese. Voice actor, photographer, director. Or hashes, and I can just keep going. So how you doing today, Lisa?
I'm very well, thank you very much. It's been a very busy week, but a very profitable and productive week. I'm doing lots of pre-production with some Big Finish stuff, and of course I'm doing this play in London at the moment. So it's been very busy.
Okay, before we start, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about the play, The Roundabout?
Yes, certainly. I'm currently doing what is, I suppose, considered an unknown play by J.B. Priestley, who some of your listeners might know is a very well-known journalist, novelist, and playwright. He died quite a few years ago, but this play was recently discovered in a collection of books of the father of the actor Hugh Ross, who some of you might know from the Countermeasures series that Big Finish do. And Hugh found this play in a collection of other writings that J.B. Priestley had done, and read it and thought it was very funny and couldn't quite understand why it had never been done before. I think there was some a record of some productions of it back in the 1930s. It was actually written in 1933. But then it sort of disappeared from view. So he thought he might revive it. I did a scratch reading of it about 18 months ago at a place called the Park Theatre in Finsbury Park, which is a new theatre in London. I suppose it might be considered sort of off West End, a little bit like off Broadway. It's a lovely theatre, though. It's a 200-seater theatre. And the person who ran the theatre loved the play and thought he would be great to put it on. So, Hugh got the producer and the money together. It's set in the 30s, in the 1930s. It could be considered by some as a sort of light drawing room comedy set in a rather grand house, but actually it is to some extent, but it is also incredibly relevant to today because it's about an estranged daughter who comes back from Russia during just after the revolution, and she sort of puts the cat amongst the pigeons in her own family, and that she's not in love with their what she considers bourgeois lifestyle. And it's to do with a sort of clash of socialism and of communism, but it's also, weirdly, a very, very funny comedy. So it's all this together, and it's going very well, and I'm very happy.
Okay, glad to hear it. Okay, when I call you guys' name, let's go ahead and intro our panel. Tell us, who you are, where you're from, in the world. Okay, so we'll start with Susan. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Susan. I'm from Southern California, and I have a question about your photography.
Hello, Susan, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Lisa. Really nice to meet you. How have you been taking photos for Equity? I understand.
Yeah, it's actually there's Equity is the Actors Union, but there's a big directory that's been going for 80 years called the Spotlight. Which is basically a big directory of every actor in the country, every professional actor, and they have their photograph and a little bit about who their agent is and how tall they are and stuff like that. And everybody has to have a 10x8 picture, a bit like actors in America. Everybody has their sort of publicity photos. And I've been taking spotlight photographs really ever since I left drama school. I was sick and tired of seeing people paying a fortune for really bad photographs, and I know, because I feel it myself, that about 95% of equity hate having their photograph taken. So I started taking photographs at drama school, which is over 30 years ago now. And like most actors, we all need other things to keep the income in. So I started it up as a hobby, really, and everybody seemed to like what I was doing. And then I left drama school, then I worked quite a lot. And then suddenly, like most actors, you sort of hit a bit of a brick wall. And about 25 years ago, I started it up as a business. So I then became, the sad thing is that unlike America, if you multitask in this country, everybody thinks you've given up the other thing. So I became quite well known as a photographer, and everybody thought I'd given up acting. So it all got a bit silly, really. But no, I still keep it up, and it still keeps me off the streets occasionally. So hooray.
Did you work with Nicholas Courtney in Equity?
Yes, well, obviously I worked with Nick because he was in the very first Bernie Summerfield audio that the very first audio that Big Finish ever made was in 1998, which is, 18 years ago. And Bernice's cat, because that character appeared in all the old New Adventures novels, Woolsey, was played by Mr. Nicholas Courtney. So I was very lucky to be introduced to Nick very early on. And of course, later on, I directed him for some companion chronicles for Big Finish. So I knew Nick pretty well. He was a splendid, splendid man.
Yeah, he's my imaginary boyfriend, and I really wanted to know what that was like for you.
I'm sure he would be charmed by the idea, Susan. I really do. He was charming. He was charming and entertaining and lovely and very bright and extremely good actor. So there's nothing to be disappointed about there, Susan.
Okay, let's get somebody else a chance, Susan. Okay, Texas Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim. I'm from Texas, and my question is about your directing at Big Finish. How hard? I mean, what's the hardest thing about it? Do you? I know you. I'm sorry. We know you direct the actors. We hear that in the behind the scenes and stuff. But do you also talk with the sound design people and the music people to determine what you want for that story, or is that assigned to a producer or something?
No, absolutely. I think it's very hard to understand the director's role. The producer is the one that commissions the writer and will basically form the entire team. So he'll have an idea about where a storyline should go. And then what happens is that he will then get a team together. So he'll get the writer, he'll get a script editor, he'll get the sound designer, and he'll get the director. Now, at that stage, me as the director, you get the script, and you hope that at that stage it would have gone through the script editor stage, and everything from there on in is then your responsibility. So all the directors at Big Finish do their own casting, and obviously if you're doing an established series already, you inherit people from the original series. You get the script, you go through it, you do your own casting. There may be a few little tweaks when it comes to punctuation or turns of phrase, or certainly in my case with Jago and Lightfoot, I'm very fussy about anachronisms, things that might not fit a Victorian era. You then go into studio, you obviously direct the actors, and I think effectively, you're acting as a third ear, as the listener. So if things don't sound quite right, pace-wise or whatever, then you direct the actors accordingly. But I think you'll find most directors will say that 99% of the success of anything is in the casting. Once you've got a really good cast together, it's sort of minimal input, hopefully. And you make sure that the story is being well served, because you're there to serve the writer and the story. And then afterwards, what happens is that those files that were recorded that day, and generally you have a sound engineer sitting next to you who'll take time codes, and you might decide on the day whether you want a first take or a second take, and he'll have made notes on the script. That all goes off to the editor. The editor then sends the director back. I generally don't leap on board until what's called the FX edit. So you get the dialogue and the special effects in together. You then listen to it and you make notes. Now, those notes might scan from 5 to 5 pages. It really depends on whether the editor really gets what you're trying to get at, whether some editors have just, got you automatically and it's absolutely fantastic. Other editors haven't quite got the tone that maybe you're after. And I equate it to like molding a pot, really. So I might say, right, I want you to put 2 beats in there, or I think we're just losing the audibility at that point, so take the explosion down at that point. And there's lots of those things. There's explosions, there's timing, there's whether you think you need to pick the pace up a bit so you get them to squeeze the gaps between all the cues, so people might be picking up their dialogue a bit quicker. There might be moments when you need really big pauses just to let the moment settle a bit. And then and the great thing about digital editing is that they're able to do this lots of different channels, obviously on different tracks. Then anyway, that goes off, all my notes go back off to the editor. The editor then sends me the effects edit again. I will then say, yep, that's fine, or maybe another tweak. Then it goes away again for the music. Now that might be the same editor or a different editor, and the music comes back and you might say, no, I don't need music there. I'm not a great fan of wall-to-wall music. I don't think it's very useful. But at the same time, what you do want is to enhance it. You know what I mean? So you then get the music edit back. You might try and tweak, because I'm a bit deaf in one ear, so I might get the levels to be tweaked a bit. I've worked for this company for too long. Too many Daleks and explosions, you know how it is. And so I might say, bring the music level down so we can actually hear the dialogue at that point, because dialogue is absolutely king in this case. And then I'll hear the final, and I'll do what is called signing it off. And then it's signed off and it's sent off to be mastered and then put onto CD and get all the artwork, and then Bob is your uncle, as they say. So it is just a day. It's quite a long process.
So you're the boss at the end of the day. You're the last person.
Yeah, absolutely. It is basically the overall tone of the entire piece. If you're doing something that's a bit more like a ghost story, then obviously what you do is you try and serve the mood of that piece as much as you can. Without kind of beating it over the head. Then, of course, David Richardson, or whoever my producer is, will listen to the final product, and and other issues might come up that I hadn't noticed, or something might not fit with what's called compliance with the BBC, especially with Doctor Who titles. There are many things that we can't deal with that they might say, well, that's a bit too political, or you've got a god in there, or you've got there are various guidelines that we're trying to be as strict as we can over, which are normally sorted out quite early on in the process, but sometimes they aren't. And then they go to, if it's a Doctor Who title, it goes to the BBC, also for approval, and then we can go ahead with it. So everybody goes, oh, why does it take so long to get these things out? But it has to be right. And I think the good thing about Big Finish is over the years, we know what kind of quality we can get from some editors. And we're so lucky because the general quality of the end product is so good that, thank you for the thumbs up, Susan. It is so good that even if the tiniest thing doesn't sound right, whether it be a technical issue or whether it be an editing issue, you do notice it because we've been so lucky with our editors. And the editors are terrific, very lucky.
Cool,
so I
thank
have
you.
to answer your question.
I know. I've been doing my own little amateur audio production, for Dr. Freedom. And, people are like, why does it take so long, to get out like 10 minutes? And it's like, because it takes me like sometimes 2.5 weeks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just, you just have to get it just right. So, I got to make sure this sounds here. I want people to hear things in the background. So I can't even imagine what you guys go through at Big Finish, because I'm pulling what's left of my hair out sometimes. Just trying to
some of these guys are so clever. I might occasionally, I get very fussy about sound effects, and especially if anything's a period piece. Is things like, I don't know what you if you know what I mean by a Routemaster bus. It's an old 1960s red bus, and it had a very particular bell sound when you pulled the cord. And you get a lot of young editors who will kind of bring in a random bell, and they go, no, I remember this the first time round. It's got to be like that. And thank God for YouTube, because there is always somebody somewhere with an antique bell or a steam train or a train whistle, things like that.
I know. I have to really thank those guys out on YouTube, because that's where I find like tons of my sound effects. So
that's so clever. Although I have to say, what makes me laugh is that occasionally you will get videos about. There's a thing that I have about those desk bells. You get the things that you ping on top. and occasionally it just doesn't sound quite right. And there's always somebody on YouTube who will take, I don't know, quarter of an hour explaining what a bell looks like, and then eventually get to play it. So it's just difficult to find these things.
Okay, next up, Graham, go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. How are we doing, Lisa? I'm Graham, and you can probably tell for the accent, I'm from up north. I'm up in Glasgow.
Oh, very nice. I love laughing.
That depends on the time of year, I'll tell you. Just a quick one for you. Brian's obviously touched upon your current project with the roundabout.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you back a wee bit earlier than that. Not that I'm going to dare show my age or yours, but back to the late 80s, where you had a small stint, I think it was roughly a year and a half, on a very popular British medical drama known as Casualty.
Well, depressingly, it is actually, as you probably know, the 30th anniversary of Casualty, and I did the very first Casualty. Yeah,
that's what brought the question in mind. Obviously, they celebrated their 30th anniversary, and I'm going, oh, there's something I could bring up.
I don't know whether the American listeners might know.
I doubt it. Brian, Casualty is essentially the BBC's version of something like ER.
Yeah, unfortunately not quite as posh as ER.
No.
It's interesting, when it first started up in the mid-80s, it was in 1986, their actual template was Hill Street Blues. They were desperately trying to find something as kind of brilliant as Hill Street Blues. And of course, British television at that time, if you look at it, was plodding along with the pace of a brontosaurus. I mean, everything was so slow, pace-wise.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look back at the Casualties 30 years ago, they do seem quite slow, but at the time they felt like faster than a speeding bullet. And it was trying to be cutting edge. And I mean, I'm going to be honest now, I think it's turned into a bit of a soap opera now, but it was hard hitting in those days. And it was quite political, but it was an exciting thing. It was my first ever television, that. So
okay.
I was learning on the hoof, you know.
Nothing wrong with that. No, that's good. That was the main crux of my question. How did you find working on that? Is that your best genre to work in terms of doing live action, or do you have other preferences?
Oh, no, I mean, I think you'll ask most actors. Most actors will say their preference is just work. So,
excellent. Yeah.
I love every medium. Although I do have to say, television can be immensely boring. Anything on film, it's just the hanging around, the waiting. It's a killer. But it was my first ever television, and the cast that they had in that show was amazing. I mean, I worked with the likes of Brenda Fricker and Robert Pugh, wonderful actor called Bernard Gallagher. There's George Harris, who played Captain Katanga in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, all sorts of people, and it was just an amazing show to work on. In the very first series, it used to be what is now known as multi-camera. So it wasn't just rehearse, record. So we actually had to rehearse, and it was a London production. It wasn't based. Some of you guys in the States won't realise it was filmed in another city called Bristol. It was based off a city called Bristol. It's now actually moved to Cardiff in Wales, where most of you will probably know the Doctor Who exhibition is. And so we had some weeks in the old television centre in London, and then we go off to do location in Bristol. And it was exciting. I felt like I'd been sort of thrown in the deep end, because in those days at drama school, you never really had any tutoring in television at all, because it just wasn't the first priority. It is now, of course. And so there I was, sort of saying to Bob Pugh, was that all right? Because nobody says anything. And he said, don't worry, they'll only tell you if it's wrong. And he went, oh, right. So
that's reassuring, yeah.
I never quite know whether that was good or bad, but I mean, I look back at it now and I go, "Oh my God, I wouldn't do it like that." No.
Excellent.
No, it was great fun, and I was lucky to work with all those guys. They were brilliant.
Okay, AJ, go ahead.
Hi there, Lisa. My name's AJ. I'm from far north Queensland in Australia.
Oh, hi. That's a long way away.
Yes, it is. My question is, when you do the voice of Ellie and Jago and Lightfoot, do you strain your voice? Like, it sounds like it's quite strenuous voice to do.
My only preoccupation when I first got that job was not to sound like Benny. So I just literally threw anything at the microphone at all. I've done a lot of radio, and there's a very particular place that I place my voice. So actually, no, it isn't much of a strain. I was taught at drama school to, my support from my diaphragm and all that sort of thing. So the problem is when I try and recreate it for people when I'm not in studio, it just sounds ridiculous. But my problem is not making her too high. So between each series, I keep having to remind myself how high she goes, because it's like, oh, Mr. Lightfoot, I really don't think so. But at the same time, I can go even higher and go, oh, let me just place this right. Hang on a minute. Oh, Mr. Lightfoot, it really doesn't, it suddenly goes up there and it's not right at all. So I have to try and bring it down just to the right level. And I love it. I love it. No, it's just a case of, how late a night I've had the night before, really. But no, if you're sensible, and also because it's not kind of wall-to-wall dialogue, it's not so bad.
Oh,
But thank you for asking. I appreciate your concern.
oh, it's,
Okay, back to you, Susan.
All right. I had another question about your direction.
Yeah.
You directed Sapphire and Steel, and you also directed Stargate, both of which have lost their
license.
their
License.
license. Yeah, their ability to be played or purchased from Big Finish.
Mm-hmm.
Are you stockpiling these, and are you moving through the? Is there going to be any ever release of this stuff that you directed in the future?
It's a really muddy area, Susan, I'm afraid, and it's kind of out of our hands. It happened with the Tomorrow People as well, of course, because you get those guys who own the rights
them too,
to all of these. And certainly in the case of the Tomorrow People, they'd already made another series. And I think it was, I can't remember, it's the Australian company, isn't it, who put that up. And of course, there was the American series. I think if something is in the pipeline and they try and make a television version of it, they have to bring in all their licenses. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things that happens. I think my most disappointing one was Stargate, because of course it is, so I'm being dozy, of course. Stargate, that's what it is behind your left shoulder. I should have guessed. What happened was that we did some audiobooks which I wasn't involved in, first of all, which was just single person talking. As far as we were concerned, MGM were never going to make Stargate again. It was not going to be, just exactly. It wasn't just going to be a situation where they were fobbing off the audio rights because it was an excuse not to make another series. That was never the case. It was always going to be an addition to whatever else happened. We then got the rights to do, as you know, full cast ones, which I did leap on board with. Jason Hay-Gallery had gone to direct a few of the original cast over in America, and it was my job to clear up all the rest in the UK. And I got a huge cast together, and it was so exciting. I mean, I was really pleased with them, actually. And I think what you've got to understand, I mean, it's great with you. You understand the notion of audio drama. I think in America, the vast majority of fans of the Stargate franchise were not going to be natural audio drama customers, if you see what I mean. In the UK, we're much more used to radio drama. We have Radio 4 who do daily dramas, 2-3 times a day. And in America, apart from perhaps, Orson Welles back in the 30s with his War of the Worlds and the LA, the radio company there, it isn't a normal thing. So we actually thought, wow, Stargate's got this huge fan base. Yourself included, absolutely. Who will go for these? And the backlash was absolutely huge. People who'd never listened to the audios just said, oh, we're not going to listen to this rubbish. It's just a load of actors standing in front of a microphone reading. And you go, no, listen to them. Please just listen to them. I know. Amazing. And we got very good reviews from the people who did listen to them and trying to persuade the majority of fans, but most of them were really vitriolic on the forums about the fact it was just a cheap replacement for making a new series, which never was, of course, you know. So I think, to be honest, the Stargate situation was more financial than license being taken away, because it was never going to pay for itself. And like most big finished products, every series has to pay for itself. It's not, they're not big money makers. All of the money you get back for one series will go back into that series. It's never kind of, spread around. It has to pay for itself, like most things. Sapphire and Steel was a different case, because I do think that at some point people would have thought they wanted to bring it back at some point. And of course, when they do pull licenses in, the sad thing is that we can no longer sell that product. So you've just got to do a bit of hunting on eBay, really. I loved Sapphire and Steel. Oh God, how lucky were we to have that cast, Susanna Harker and David Warner. I mean, we were so lucky. And I thought Nigel Fair's script and his producing of the whole series was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. Of course, I am biased because I played Ruby and I want to play her again. But, and of course, I got to direct some wonderful actors. I was extremely lucky. But I'm sorry to disappoint you, Susan. I really don't think they're going to be happening again. If at any point they ever do, believe you me, you'd be the first to know.
Thank you. And one further point about that, you directed another one of my heartthrobs, which is Michael Shanks. And so I was just like,
well, that was a bit of a strange one.
Tell me about him.
Well, I had to direct Michael Shanks over Skype. I never actually met him because he was in Canada. So at midnight at Moat Studios with Toby Robinson and a very nice snack that he got us together, I directed Michael a couple of times over Skype. So I had actually weirdly met him briefly before, many years before, and I was meant to be taking his photographs for a magazine. But he actually wasn't very well that day and he wasn't very happy. So I didn't take any photographs and sat in a corner. And I met him very briefly at a convention. But directing, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He just did his thing. And it was just a case of saying faster and slower. Really.
Okay, back to you, Tim.
I enjoyed the two audiobooks you did for BBC audiobooks last year. Are you going to be doing any more anytime soon?
Well, I suppose it depends on whether the BBC want to do any more of the new adventures. I mean, there's always going to be that slightly muddy area about what's canon, what isn't canon, what they've got the rights to. I'm very confused about how Just War fits in with the BBC thing. I suppose that was more of a sort of a retro thing. I loved reading Just War. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And which is, of course, the Paul Cornell.
You mean Human Nature?
I mean Human Nature, not Just War. Sorry, that's Lance's. I'm going mad. Sorry, last 5 seconds. No, Human Nature. That was the one. I absolutely loved Human Nature. I thought it was a splendid book. And as I've said in the past, especially when I was recording the first Love and War, which we recorded for Big Finish a while ago, when you're reading and doing Benny in her early days, I'm always slightly worried that I'm not going to recognize the character and I've gone off in a completely different, direction than I should have done. But Paul has created such a solid character, Paul Cornell this is, that she just sprung off the page, and I can see why she was so popular back in the days of when she was just in the novels. I thought it was a splendid novel. And then, of course, I remember, about 18 months ago, Scott Hancock leaping up to me going, "Guess what have you heard?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Gary Russell's writing a 12th Doctor novel." And I went, yeah. "Guess who the companion is?" I said, "I have no idea." And then he said, "Bernie Summerfield." And I went, yes! I was really excited about that. But of course, then I had to find out, I had to do Peter Capaldi's voice, which was, why am I always saddled with, and I apologise to our Scottish friend, why am I always saddled with doing Scottish accents? It's Sylvester in one and Peter in the other. I'm like, oh God, sorry.
Well, for AJ, you did quite a few Australian ones in that one as well.
Yes, I did a good one. You see, Gary is down there at the moment, so I apologise to AJ in Australia. It was slightly random. Actually, I didn't have to do that many. I had to try and do an Aboriginal voice, which I do apologise to anyone who was vaguely offended by that, but I just made it very slow, and that was the only thing I could do. But no, I was very lucky. I'd never done audiobooks before. I mean, I directed a couple, for Big Finish, one of Paul Darrow's books for Blake Seven and some, autobiographies and things like that. But actually doing one, I tell you what, those guys who do a lot of them, it's such hard work. You're there solidly, just you. And I mean, actually, the actor and me really enjoyed both of them because there were lots of very good characters in them. So getting a chance to do some funny voices it's always a good excuse to have a bit of fun. But I'm glad you enjoyed them. That's terrific news.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
Thanks, Bri. Just on my second question. So I'll.
Oh no! But I do apologise for my Scottish accents.
Oh no, never mind. I've heard worse. Believe you me. As an add-on to Tim's question, is there any books, be it in the novel range, that haven't been tackled yet you would like to see done, if you're aware of them?
Well, this is the problem with me, is that I'm very bad at homework, and I don't know many of them. Obviously, the ones that I've done for Big Finish so far, Highest Science, and what's the one that's just about to come out?
Original Sin?
Say again?
Original Sin.
Yes, Original Sin.
Yep.
Has that one come out? Yes, it has. No, Original Sin hasn't come out yet, has it?
December.
That's it. Thank you very much. You see, you know more than I do.
There you go.
Very good. I'm impressed. Yes, I mean, those are the ones that I know more about. There are ones that I've heard of, but I don't think Benny is in. It's interesting because obviously the very first series of Bernice adapted those Doctor Who novels. So there was White, there was Just War, there was obviously Oh No It Isn't, and Beyond the Sun, was it? Something like that. And they obviously had to take the Doctor out at that point because Big Finish didn't have the rights. Yeah. So that's always an I don't think, to be honest, they'll be revisiting them because of course they exist in one form or another. I loved doing those. Going back to Just War, that I misnamed as Human Nature earlier on. I thought that was a terrific story, very well handled. I love those historical ones. And so, are there any that you think should be adapted?
I think they've done a good job of what's coming out thus far. I always get a kick out of All Consuming Fire with Nick Briggs' interpretation of Sherlock Holmes. Always a good chuckle out of that one. Yeah.
I thought it was a very funny script. I love because obviously the funny thing was that I was doing it with Richard Earl, who played Watson, but he wasn't available, so I never got to play with him, as it were.
Oh,
he's such a good actor, Rich. I think it was terrific. I enjoyed that one. It's a good story.
Excellent. Thanks.
That's okay.
Okay, back to you, AJ.
Which Doctor on TV would you like Bernice to be playing beside against, with as a companion?
All of them. No, I do. I like all of them. Isn't that terrible? I mean, this is the strength of the. I keep going back to this, but this is the strength of the character that Paul has created. I think she could have a very good dynamic with just about all of them. I would secretly love to do one with Tom. I just think that would be a gas. I'm a huge fan of Matt Smith's. I would love to have a go, just to see what that dynamic would work. I've been lucky enough, obviously, to work with Paul McGann. I love it. I mean, I actually, sadly, I do love them all. Isn't that sad? And each one of them would bring out different things. And I can see you rubbing your hands, Susan. I'm afraid I'm in the same vein as you. I would like a little slice of every Doctor to go with Bernice, but I'm not greedy,
Cool.
Okay, back to you, Susan.
God, I'm crying. This is Let me ask you about your work with any charities that you have. Do you have charities that you're plugged into? Are you still working with the one that Lala Ward picked up on?
That's right. No, I'm not anymore. It's funny, you go in swings and roundabouts, and you give as much time as you physically can. I was involved in a place that some of you might not have heard of, but it's called Denville Hall, which is the actors' retirement home. And at the stage that I joined, it was under the umbrella of a charity called the Actors Charitable Trust, which dealt with more of the needs of children of actors who might have fallen on hard times or have medical issues. And I still very much support them. But what happens is that Denville Hall is a very, very busy charity. It requires a lot of time. Lala appointed me as her deputy, as the chairman of the House Committee, deputy chairman. Then I took over from Lala when she went on to be the chairman of the Actors Charitable Trust with another actress. Then Lala came back as chairman. It's a long and convoluted story, but I'm still very much a supporter of theirs. It's an amazing place. And what was so extraordinary about working for that charity is that you get to meet actors you never thought you get to know. I mean, really, really quite amazing people. And also the staff who work at the hall were terrific. People say that oh, you know, one old people's home is much like another, and I can tell you it isn't, as you can imagine. They're very fussy about their entertainment for a start. They won't take any funny people coming in with a song sheet and a piano. They want the real thing, you know. So we're very lucky. We used to get casts from the West End coming up and doing sort of shortened versions in the little theatre there, and that was terrific. So no, I'm involved in a slightly more local to me, where I live in the home county, is about 25 miles outside London, and I'm involved with the local hospital here. And I volunteer doing bits and bobs there. So in a way, I've sort of taken my experience from Denville and put it in other places. But I mean, this is the problem with being self-employed, is sometimes you don't have as much time as you physically need to be able to help the way you'd like to. But it doesn't mean to say that in the future that I wouldn't be more involved. But I'm quite happy to support. I also do, let's be honest, most actors do at some point do charity concerts. And I will always give my time to, you know, whether it be doing poetry reading or singing or doing a special concert for various charities, which I've been lucky enough to be asked to do. So happy to do that.
That's awesome.
Okay, Tim, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm just lagging a bit.
Hello, Tim.
Hello. What's next for Benny? I mean, we just enjoyed the
Have you heard them yet?
Huh?
Have you heard them yet?
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good. Well, I don't know whether you listen to the extras, but it seems pretty. You see, the thing is that as a director, I get information. As an actor, I get no information. So, you know, I don't find out to the last minute what goes on in my own series where I have my name on the box. I have no idea. As far as I am aware, I will be revisiting the alternate universe. So I'm quite happy about that. Because, as you know, I know David Warner very well, so that suits me. And I make sure he won't be giving me any more notes, as usual. Like that. Don't do it like that, are you? Fine. He is absolutely brilliant to work with. I'm very lucky. I've been very fortunate in James Goss producing. I think he's really, really managed to find something new. It's always difficult when you've been playing a character for so long. And I say it is coming up for 18 years, trying to keep a character fresh. I know it's very difficult for people who've been long-term listeners of Bernice, because there have been so many story arcs and so many regulars, and then the regulars change. And then you, in a sense, you have to reinvent every so often. And obviously not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm sure James won't do that. And I'm absolutely sure at some point we'll see some old characters back. If I don't see Brax at some point, I'll start jumping up and down, because I think he's a wonderful character. But it's been a pleasure to work with all the different producers who've all had different takes on her, but without losing the essential strengths of her characters. So I look forward to maybe a couple more episodes with the Alternative Doctor. I think it'd be fab. Unbound, that's the word, isn't it? Unbound Universe, that's the word.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
So, Tim, you're 2 for 2, mate. Just as an add-on to Tim's question again, Lisa.
Yeah.
Am I correct in assuming that you directed that box set, the Volume 3, The Unbound Universe?
Oh, no, I didn't direct that one.
No? Oh.
No, the only Bernice I have ever directed was a Lawrence Miles script called, was it The Age of something Adolescence? Something. Oh, it's so long ago. Something. It was about flying dinosaurs, talking dinosaurs, usual thing.
Oh, that would have been a blast. Yeah.
And Adolescence of Time. That's what it was called. That's it. And also Jason's last story with Steve Fuel.
Oh yeah.
But actually, I like to step away from the Bernice because it's at times you just need other people to get on with things. I'm just greedy with Jago and Lightfoot because I love Jago and Lightfoot and it's my baby and I want to, you know. I get very cross when they go off with another doctor and nobody asks me along. No, I'm only joking. But no, with Bernice, I think you need, as an actor, you need time to be able to do your homework properly on that. And as obviously directing is quite a full workload as well. So I think my brain would probably explode if I did that as well. No, we had Scott Hancock on that, the last 3 box sets, and he's very good to always get some great casts in. It's very lucky last time.
All right, well, that's good to know that Colin Baker was in the After Christmas card list there. Fantastic. Just a quick side one. With the companion chronicles that you've directed over the years, do you have 2 or 3 favourites that you tend to get back to? And
I do actually. I mean, I love the whole idea of companion chronicles. I love those intimate dramas. I love especially when they're more two-handed. Sometimes you can have maybe a bit too much narration, but I just love the dynamic that you can work with that. I'm very, very fond of Simon Gurria's scripts. That trilogy with Jean Marsh, which Home Truths and the other 2, I loved. I loved the Oliver trilogy as well with Tom Allen. They were lovely, intimate little dramas. We just completed a trilogy with Peter Purves as well, with War to End All Wars, that little circuit of ones that ended up in the previous box set. I just love all of them, really. And in a strange sort of parallel, I also I love some of the scripts we had from the Liberator Chronicles, which was the Blake 7 series, of a similar sort of companion chronicle style for Blake 7. And we had a wonderful script. I think it was James Goss who wrote a script called 3 with Servalan. And those little jewels of dramas, I think, are really great. But in terms of the companion chronicles, I do love those trilogies. I thought they're terrific. And I love Home Truths. It was like a good old-fashioned ghost story. I thought it was wonderful.
Excellent, thanks.
Okay, back to you, AJ. Go ahead.
All right. With the episode you did for Doctor Who back in '89, Survival, did you and Sophie Aldred feel that the underlying connection that most viewers saw later on, the apparent relationship that was formed between your 2 characters?
It's so weird. It's interesting because I was lucky enough to meet the writer. Oh, God, this is embarrassing. My old brain. Ronan, that's it, Ronan. I met her. She's an extremely well-regarded playwright in this country now, Ronan Munro. And it wasn't until years later I read something she wrote saying, oh, yes, there was this underlying gay relationship. I went, that completely passed me by. All I knew was that I was hot and I was knackered and I had to remember my lines under half a ton of fun fur and latex, But, actually, the relationship between Ace and Cara, it's interesting. The original script, the script that we had was fantastic. I think there was always going to be that compromise when you had a lack of money and time when it came to the end effects. I mean, you look at what they can do now, and I think you'd find the whole dynamic of that really different. I just saw her as somebody coming over to the dark side when it came to animal, whatevers. But Simon Gurria has a very funny reference to the bit where they're running in slow motion as that, what is he called? Oh, it's something very rude about, the lesbian run of, I don't know, tiger run or something. It was all very silly. All I remember is that I pulled a muscle very badly and they could barely get the Land Rover into first gear because I could barely run, which is why they ended up being slow motion. Yes, it looked like I was an invalid. It was ridiculous. Trying to run in sand in boots. That's always a good one. But no, in fact, the relationship, I think you can read pretty much anything into it you like. I think it was a strongly written episode. I think it came at a time in Doctor Who's history that was unfortunate. I think the execution was as good as it can have been under the circumstances. And I'd love to have a go at it again, actually. I'm interested. Was it an episode you came to when you were quite young, or have you kind of rediscovered it later on?
I haven't seen the series for a while, but I did watch it on DVD not too long ago when I purchased it. And I didn't see it. I just saw it as two people who had a wanderlust.
Bond, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that run wild, run free, but stuff, no, I completely agree with you, which is actually, I think, the strength of any Doctor Who. You should be able to take it on any level you choose.
That's right.
Be pretentious. I think we're all right. And we're on the anti-pretension league here.
Now I see what you've done, AJ. Someone's going to take that portion of that episode and set it to Born Free.
I apologize.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay, back to you, Susan.
All right. Well, Graham took my question about the Companion Chronicles. I liked it. But and I guess I'm just gonna come off what AJ just asked you. So working with Sylvester McCoy in the ultimate episode, you are really, really great in that. I loved it, and I was just wondering how connected you've stayed with Sylvester over the years, and how connected you've stayed with Sophie over the years.
Well, the funny thing, and I'm sure you've heard it said before, the funny thing with Doctor Who is it is like a family, a bit like Big Finish. It's a job you do for 2 weeks. 28 years ago, God knows how many years ago it is now. And it's a job, A, that never goes away, but B, since my involvement with Big Finish, every time you go to a convention, you meet your mates. So actually, I never really lost contact with Sophie at all, because we had a lot of mutual friends, and that's inevitable in the acting industry. I mean, it's overcrowded, but very small. So pretty much everybody knows everybody. Especially if you've been in the industry for a long time. And then Sylvester, of course, I've got to know, I did you probably heard of these fan cruises they do over in America. And I'd been on a fan cruise couple with Sylvester. And over the years, obviously with Big Finish starting obviously with the Doctor Who 17 years ago, you meet all the time. So you're effectively sort of mates, you're all friends. And Sophie is absolutely lovely. Turns out she knows my nephew-in-law very well, old family friends. So we pretty much keep in contact, and they're lovely, absolutely lovely. And Sylvester's a joy to be in his company.
So are you are you a fan of his Radagast character either?
But shamefully, I haven't seen the movie. Oh my God. It's I did go and see his Fool in Lear. Does that count? I went to see when he was in King Lear.
It's a bit long.
Oh, yeah, I had heard that actually, Tim. I thought on the circuit, it's, bring a thermos flask and a cushion. I might do it on DVD at some point. I think it's a shocking admission, isn't it? I really shouldn't admit that. But I love his photographs. How perfect is he for that role? Absolutely superb. And now he's got this great career, suddenly resurgent and going after Hollywood, and so exciting. It really is. Who'd have thought? Brilliant.
Okay, back to you, Tim.
Well, speaking of McCoy, it seems strange that until the last couple of years with the relaunch of the new adventures of Bernice Summerfield, mm-hmm. and the novel adaptations that Big Finish has done, there haven't been a whole lot of stories with the Seventh Doctor and Benny. Why do you suppose that is? Or is it just because you're both too busy with the other rangers?
I think we're both too busy. I think it's like anything, especially with Big Finish, is that you don't want to overcook things too much. And I think revisiting their relationship every so often works really well. I know years ago, there was a little bit of resistance, I suppose, to adapting the novels because they wanted to do their own thing, make their own original dramas. And I think now Big Finish is so established in that wonderful stable of really new writers that they've got that now was the time to revisit those novels. It's not an excuse not to write original drama. So I think, to be honest, because Bernice has always had her own series, first of all, suddenly putting her in with the seventh in original form would have been trickier because it would seem like a backward step rather than going back to the novels. I think is a really good idea, especially of introducing her to people who really know nothing about the character at all. Somebody said a little while ago, and I don't know whether this is the truth, is that Bernice is the longest running, continuous running companion who's never been on television. And is this really weird dichotomy with fans. Oh, is she canon? Isn't she canon? And now she's in a 12th Doctor novel. She is canon, or, you know, she appeared a bit in the Five-ish Doctors and all that sort of stuff. It's a really weird situation because she's very well known in some quarters and completely unknown in others. So that little introduction of those early novels with the Seventh Doctor that Big Finish have done, I think, is a very clever idea. And now, of course, with her box sets being with some people love David Warner's Doctor, so they're going to listen to a few of those and go, oh, I don't know much about this character. And some people will love Sylvester but had never heard him with Benny. So I think Big Finish have been very loyal to the character, considering, you know, how long the old girl's been going, really. So I'm just grateful she's still there, frankly.
Okay, I hope I ain't stealing someone's question, but this one just popped into my head. You know, now that we have the new Monsters Oil Classic Doctor series running about, which is fantastic from what I've heard so far.
Yeah.
Is there any one of the new monsters you'd like to see Benny come up against or even pair up with?
Oh, God, now you're going to test my knowledge of the new monsters, aren't you?
Sorry.
I'm just an actor saying words, don't blame me. I'm just trying to think. I'd quite like her to meet, now you're going to get me, is this right? Is the green one the Silurians? Is that the one that's in the Paternoster gang? Is that yeah. I think she'd be quite good with a Silurian, just because, you know, I think that would be a good match. In terms of, you know, foes, oh, blimey, I don't know. What was that farting one? That was a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Slovene.
That's it. Maybe that might be a good laugh. I'd like Benny up against them. How would you do that? I don't know. You should probably offer them a drink or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I often remark only Chris Eccleston could have pulled off the line. Would you mind not farting while I'm trying to save the world?
You're absolutely right.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
How the hell am I supposed to follow that? What the hell? Oh, man. Probably a question you get a lot, Lisa, but what the hell? I'll ask it for the benefit of record and timestamp and whatnot. If you were an actor / director, what would you have envisioned yourself being in life?
If I hadn't, oh, God. You see, somebody pointed out the other day that I'd ended up doing all my hobbies for a living.
Oh,
you know, the irony being is that I thought, I always wanted, you know, there was a possibility I was going to go to art school at one point, but then in a way you could call that the photography. And then I've always wanted to be an actor. So, and I also I used to do a bit of singing. I haven't got a very pop voice, got quite a traditional voice. So I thought maybe I'd go off in that direction. But actually, weirdly, all the things I ever really wanted to do, I'm doing now, which is a bit bonkers, really. I had an agreement with my parents before I went to drama school to do a secretarial course. So there was a point where I was kind of working in offices, and I knew what I didn't want to do. Let's put it that way. The one good thing is that I can type. Hurrah! So when computers came in, that was at least stood me in good stead. I don't know. The problem that I have had is that I'm probably a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. So, you know, people go, well, why didn't you go into this? Or why don't you know? Because I direct and I take photographs. They say, well, why don't you go into television directing? And you think, well, oh, I couldn't cope with the early mornings, you know. And also, I think if you go into anything, you have to be passionate about it. You have to have it. And it's all very well saying, yes, I could do that, and I know how I'd want to do it, but I think you have to be passionate about it, whether it be road sweeping or, you know, typing or painting or anything you do. You want to need to do it. And I think I'm very lucky in that I have been able to do what I wanted to do all my life. You know, I knew what I wanted to do. It doesn't earn me a lot of money, but I'm happy in my work, and I think that probably is the best thing.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I totally concur with regards to early mornings. To me, early mornings is for coffee, whiskey, and contemplation.
Gosh, that's an interesting combo.
Yeah, there you go.
Sleep and contemplate. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, back to you, AJ.
Yeah, okay. Who would win in the fight between you and Riversong as Bernice and some Riversong? Because your both characters are similar.
I know. It's, oh God, when she first arrived, I thought, thank you, Stephen. Goodbye, Benny. I think actually, regardless of their shared profession, I think they are very different characters.
Huh.
I really do. I think River is, she's kind of alluring in a very sexy way, and she's I know she's wily, whereas I think Benny is much more straightforward and cuts the rubbish, she says politely, and just she's a pragmatist. I don't think she's a romantic Benny. I think in the sense that I think that maybe River Song has got that. I don't know. She's just a lot sexier than Benny. I think. But in a fight, oh well, you know, who's got the trowel? I do. I can always throw the hip flask at her. I don't know. Mind you, she has kind of, you know, forged all her degrees, hasn't she? So I think she's a survivor, Benny. So, you know, who knows? I think they'd probably just prance off into the sunset together. What about that?
Thank you.
Sorry, not to be more decisive on that.
No, it's good.
Okay.
No, yeah, that would be an interesting episode. Yeah.
We're back at survival again, aren't we? No.
Okay, back to you, Susan.
Okay, to leapfrog off what AJ said again, who would win in an argument, you or Daniel Jackson? Bernie or Daniel Jackson? Bernie.
My ignorance here. I don't know who Daniel Jackson is. Who's Daniel Jackson?
Stargate.
Stargate.
Oh, Stargate. Okay. Oh, of course, yes, of course. Michael Shanks. Duh. Sorry. Yes, that shows you how much I.
No. It's cool. I just was curious, like, you know.
Okay. Well, I think Benny would beat the lot, but I'm biased. She's been at it longer. She knows these things. The older and the wiser. That's what I say.
Yeah, because chances are she's actually been to that era that he'd be arguing with her about anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, back to you, Tim.
Well, the series returning back in 2005 was a big deal, and I was just wondering, how did that affect Big Finish in the long term? Because you guys have been doing audios for several years at that point, but did it give you quite a boost?
Well, weirdly, initially, it didn't. It really didn't. I mean, obviously, I think Big Finish, I wasn't in at that point. I am not an employee of Big Finish. And of course, those guys have to work really hard with doing the licensing. And it was terrific that actually, and we probably know there's a bit of a story on this, that Russell Davis pretty much saved Big Finish from in keeping the license for Doctor Who when that came up, because it was probably better off that not a lot of people knew about Big Finish at that point, because we could easily have lost it. So I think we have to have a thank Russell for that. But when the series first came out, you've got to understand there are a lot of people who didn't know what Doctor Who was, especially the younger generation, unless their parents had been fans, of course, in which case, we meet a lot of very young children who'd been indoctrinated from a very early age. I think initially the sales did drop, but what's been so amazing over the years is that they kept faith with the quality of their work. The BBC recognised the quality of that work and has helped And that's helped Big Finish in that, A, they didn't drop them, but B, they have brought Big Finish into the fold of Doctor Who in so much so that one is now attached to the other. So now I would say, having gone through that slightly tricky period when the second series, the new series came out. Of course, it's not new anymore because it's 10 years old, but I think in playing very quietly and playing by the rules and keeping the quality up, they have now gained much more now in terms of listenership and following by just doing steady but sure. I think I don't think it was a panic as such, but it did dip considerably, I think, when it first came out, because obviously people go, oh, well, we've got the television now. We've got what people call, in inverted commas, the real thing. So that was, it was going to be difficult, but I think now I would say it's a definite benefit, and of course we've been lucky enough to be able to use the new characters, River Song and all the, and Gemma Redgrave's, the unit and all, and obviously I've been lucky enough to do the Jago and Lightfoot and Strax, being able to use the new monsters. Well done, Susan. I agree with you. I think it's splendid. So that also gives, the BBC have also given Big Finish latitude to explore a lot more stories, because, as I said earlier, when you're running something for this long, I mean, whether it be Benny for 18 years, but the Doctor, 50 years plus, blimey, trying not to repeat yourself is devilishly difficult. And the fact that we've been allowed to use these new characters that bring whole new dynamics to the Doctors they're working with, I think it's really exciting. So in a sense, initially it was tricky. I would say now they're almost side by side. And I think that whether they not made more episodes now than the television, haven't they? I might be plucking that fact out of thin air, but I think so. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's one big thing to me, so.
Oh, good. Good. That's what we like to hear. Hooray.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
One big ball and all in the one sphere. For me, you just mentioned, you touched upon it there, Lisa, it's the somewhat bureaucracy at times at the BBC. And obviously, as you've alluded to, they let you play in the playground a bit more now these days, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Can you ever recall an instance where they've basically shut you down on an idea or nipped something in the bud? You thought, well, what the heck was wrong with that? Or is that no part of your jurisdiction to find that out?
Graham, you just broke up there a bit. Could you repeat that question again?
Yep, no problem. I'm basically asking, was there ever an instance where the BBC nipped something in the bud, an idea that one of the producers might have had?
As you say, I'm not really in the mix on that.
Okay.
Certainly with some storylines,
Mm-hmm.
they don't think it's quite compatible with the license, because I know it's a very controversial idea. There's always this crossover with a children's show, is it a family show, is it an adult show? You hope that it would work on all levels, but you've also got to consider the kind of tone that they want to maintain over the years, which I actually think those narrow channels can sometimes make a drama stronger, because you don't obviously have to go for the obvious. And it makes you work harder in terms of how you put your message across or your story across. I think there have been things that they said, oh, I think you should rethink this particular angle of the story, or we don't like that, subplot. But luckily I jump on board at a much later stage. So luckily all those negotiations have been sorted out by the time I get the script.
Always good to have an easy work day.
Okay. Back to you, AJ.
Okay. How much influence do you have over Bernie Summerfield's character from the original story that outlines of what the character was to what she is now?
I like to let the new producers have as much say as they like, and I think also there is a lot of negotiation amongst the producers and the guys at Big Finish, the regulars at Big Finish, about if the tone isn't quite right, if it's they don't like a direction that something's going in. personally myself, the only thing I ever say to producers, and I have actually had words about a couple of scripts way back in the past, in that if you give Bernice too much banter, she becomes unbelievably irritating. So, if she over jokes, if she uses that jocularity, that banter at very specific moments, and if you keep using it because it's a sort of default mechanism for Bernice, it becomes actually quite boring. So if I think there are too many jokes, or I don't think the jokes are something that would be quite her, I'd say that I don't think that's something she'd do. I remember there was only one time I really took issue with something. There was an episode shortly. Now this is a spoiler, so please block your ears if you don't know what happened to her husband.
Oh.
Do we all know what happened to her husband? Okay. Well, anybody listening to this outside, block your ears now. It was shortly after Jason, shall we put in inverted commas, left the series, where she had this exchange with a guy in a lift, which was her first emotional exchange she'd had since Jason had disappeared. And I said, there is no way she would do that easily after what had happened to her husband. I'd say there was no way emotionally she could deal with that situation and not either refer to it or think it's going to be that easy. So they did rewrite a little bit, because you've got to understand an emotional progression in any character. And you get it, most actors who've either been in soap operas or in series for a long time would always say, my character wouldn't do that. Now, sometimes if it's an actor who just is in rather love with the way they play things, they would say that, and you think, oh, come on, just do what's on the page. But there are other times when you've been playing something for a long time and you look at a bit of dialogue and you go, there's no way she'd say it like that. Because you do start to inhabit the character after a while. I mean, obviously, it's different for me because I just pick it up, once a year. So it's not as if I'm playing it every day. But it's not so much direction, it's more to do with turns of phrase or the way she behaves with people that I might have a little bit of say in. But that's actually once I see the actual script as opposed to, anything earlier on in the process.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back to you, Susan.
So I was wondering, you do so many different things, and you're such a busy woman. How do you balance all of the facets of your life and your relationships outside of the work?
Well, it's funny when your work is what you want to do when you play, it sort of weirdly fits in. My partner's in the same industry, some as you might know, and he loves it. I think it works very well. I split my time between my house here in the home counties and his place in London. So when I'm working at Big Finish, I'm living with him and he knows all the people I work with and I know all the people he works with. We're back to that thing about everybody knowing each other in the industry. And you just make sure that you have a couple of weeks out every so often and you go away and you have a nice time and it's a giggle. It's not the same, it has to be honest, it's not the same as having a 9-to-5 job. Like most people who are self-employed, it's either feast or famine. So you pick your times. I have been extremely, extremely lucky with Big Finish because there's no other company like it in the country. I mean, I know that sounds extreme, but there is no other company like it. BBC is different. All those other, it is like a family and we all know each other. Ooh, there we go. In fact, that is David Richardson emailing me about something I can't tell you about. There we go. Sorry about that. We all know when we need time off and when we don't. We're all mates. We're all friends. It's not like an office environment when, there are bosses and there are people who are sort of forelock tugging. So to balance your own life, it is quite easy. You might say, look, I'm going to take a couple of weeks out and go on holiday there. Or, when are you free? Can you do this? Can't you do that? So everything's pretty flexible. And I have some very good friends, sadly, most of whom are all in the same industry. So we all, it's the nature of the job. Actually, I was discussing this with Hugh Ross, who directed this play, as I say, who's also in Countermeasures. And I've used it a couple of times for Big Finish, in that you have this tight. Big Finish is a place where you can go and be treated very, very well. You're fed very well by Toby. You have a good laugh. We're all actors. We all understand what we do. There's nobody patronizing you. There's no egos. You make sure that you don't cast anybody with an ego anyway. And so it just, I don't know, it just works out really, really well. And it's a bit of a pat reply, but it's, you know, luckily, easily. We're all very lucky to do this job.
Well, we're lucky to have you do this job.
Oh, bless you.
and you're really an amazing woman, so I just was curious.
Well, I mean, also the advantage is, it's not a conscious decision, I don't have children. And believe you me, I've seen actors trying to juggle their career and having children. That is a hard juggling act. So I have it easy compared to those guys.
Okay, back to you, Tim.
When you're directing, how much leeway do you have with the script, or do you stick to the script exactly as it's written, or will you allow an actor to change a line or two?
As I might have said earlier, by the time I get the script, it will have gone through a script editing stage anyway. So my take on it, the only things that I only ever tweak, and I pretty much leave it to the day we record, is to do with the way that some sentences are formed. Most writers, and I would say this to any aspiring writers, have got to read their work out loud. They have to see that occasionally an actor needs to breathe in the middle of a sentence. So I might run, we might have tripped up on an incredibly long sentence in something, especially when you're dealing with science fiction occasionally, where you'll say, okay, put a comma in there, put a semicolon in there, and just split it so you've got enough breaths to get through. As I said earlier, it's anachronisms, things that just the turn of phrase that simply wouldn't happen in Victorian England, or cultural references that people wouldn't know about in 1968, all of those sort of little historic things. I'm quite a stickler for those, actually. I have to say that I'm a little bit anally retentive on that. So when it comes to changes, occasionally you'll find an actor who'll say, oh, it's much easier if I just turn those two words around. Occasionally an actor might not quite understand the context, so you might have to make sure that you know the story of the actual audio, and you go, well, actually in episode 1 this happens, so the reason you're saying this is X, Y, and Z. So that's a sort of plot point, but it's never anything so intrinsic that you very occasionally you get an actor going, I think I should say it like that, and you really have to be very diplomatic and say, well, in this case, perhaps, that won't work in this context, and you might argue, but that very, very, very rarely happens. So I'm very lucky. And also, and I'm sure you're aware, as people who listen to Big Finish, our writing stable is phenomenally good. And I think most broadcasters and commissioners would be lucky to have half the writers that we've found at Big Finish. I mean, they're amazing. Look at who we've discovered. They're fantastic.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
Thanks, Brian. Obviously, it's 2016, and we're roughly 6-7 years into what I like to call the social media boom. Now, obviously, you obviously have a place for it, as you've got a few accounts here and there and whatnot. But I'm interested in what your take on is. Is it a hindrance, a plus, a negative when it comes to your profession?
I mean, it is very weird, because I just assume when it comes to audio that people really don't know who you are, or that it's a very niche market. I'm constantly amazed at the people I trip up on who know all about Big Finish and Benny and Jago and all of that sort of stuff. I would say you approach social media with cautious respect. You use it to contact, people like your good selves, which is fantastic, and it also means that we can look at that, we're all over the world on this contact. I mean, that's magic. You told me at the age of 15 I could do this in my front room at home. You just wouldn't believe it. I remember my very first boyfriend's father brought back a cordless telephone from America, and I remember in 1981, in the middle of their garden, ringing my parents and going, "Guess where I am? I'm outside." It was the most exciting thing. So in terms of technology, it's amazing. I think I do dip into forums occasionally, and I think dangerous places. I think some people who have discovered social media should undiscover social media pretty damn quickly. It's interesting when it comes to reviews, of course, now, because it's not just the broadsheets and the newspapers that review. We have a lot of online reviews. I can have an opinion on some. I will think, yes, that person absolutely understands what we've been doing. Other people haven't a clue, but because they might blog a lot, or they have a very active, they're very busy with their website, it makes them look popular. It actually just makes them busy, which is a different thing. And I think, like anybody, you can pick and choose the people that you think you respect or otherwise. I think dislike, and I use the word loosely, hatred, is a much easier emotion to evoke than happiness and enjoyment. And I think the people who do that ultimately feel they have more power over people. Now, that's my amateur psychologist's hat on, thinking that actually it's terribly easy to provoke people and into hating something, and it gives the sense of control to that person, and it gives them an enormous kick. And from our point of view, especially in the creative industries, we spend our life being rejected. We spend our life being criticized and told the people's opinions of, and you can't please all the people all the time. So in terms of social media, I've tripped up on people who absolutely detest my work, and you think, well, that's fine, let's discuss it, but it's very difficult when people find it so easy to be vitriolic. So I think also, as actors, you've got to be very careful about how much of your life you give away. I watch a lot of very young actors who seem to think their lives are more interesting than they feel people have to know about their lives in order to say, oh, look, here I am, I'm a celebrity. When I was at drama school, our best asset was our anonymity, because otherwise we can't play the parts, pretend to be other people, if you like, because people will know far too much about what we've had for breakfast, So social media, in some senses, is brilliant, because you can, rather like I joined Twitter a couple of years ago, and when it came to doing the play, it's great. You can tell people about the play. People can choose to ignore it or think, no, that's something that's interesting. I might quite like to go along and see that. The same with Big Finish. You've got to have a social media presence. Otherwise, you disappear. You have to play the game. But what I think is you play the game cautiously. And that's all you can do. And develop a Teflon skin. Apart from that, it's fine.
So, some great food for thought there. Hopefully a friend of ours from Tottenham took those words in. Thanks, Lisa.
I would say, as a little addenda to that, people think we are Teflon coated. It's very, very difficult to be Teflon coated when things get very personal, and really it affects some people more than others. And I've been around the houses enough for it not to affect me. But rather like most people, everybody will remember the 2 bad reviews over the 50 good reviews. It's always, it's a tricky one.
Just ignore them. Onward and upward.
Absolutely.
Okay, back to you, AJ.
Yeah. Have you ever had a random fan just come up to you with a story saying, look, I got a story, would you read my your story?
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. It's always a very tricky one, that I actually don't commission. I will always say, give it a go. It's one of the reasons Big Finish don't really have open submissions very often, because they receive thousands, and I am not underestimating. I'm not overstating that. Thousands. It's a bit like when somebody puts an advert out for an actor in an advert. They will receive at least 2,000 applications. Now, in order to deal with that what they call the slush pile in any satisfactory manner is almost impossible. So, they'll do the odd competition like they have with the Paul Spragg short story, the short trips recently, and they will have to employ somebody to go through those. It's a big process. Occasionally, people will send things. I'm going to be brutal here. I would say that 95% of most stories aren't terribly good. You'll get occasionally some people who will absolutely understand dialogue. And then all you can do, if you want to be a writer, and I've heard it said to many, because I'm not a writer. I know, I recognize when something works, but I know, because I'm realistic enough to know, I am not a writer. So I'll leave it to those who do know. But generally, if you want to write, all you've got to do is keep writing. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. There'll always be somebody who will have an opinion, as we've just touched on when it comes to, social media. And you might say, you're a fool, you don't know, I'm a genius, you don't see my genius. And sometimes you get a lot of people going, you don't see my genius, and you say, yeah, it's very, very difficult to be diplomatic to people when they plainly don't have genius. It's very difficult because some people will be embryonically good, and you'll say, that's good. It's not quite ready yet, but it's good. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. And they will. Rather, like I said earlier, if you're going to do anything, have a passion for it, keep doing it. And one day, something will drop. Something will suddenly drop in the right time and the right place. I would always say, if you're passionate about it, don't give up. Then also listen to the people that you actually respect. And if they say, I don't think this is quite for you, then take that on board, look at it realistically and go, okay, can I see that actor playing this? Can I? No. In which case, practice, learn. I mean, it's the problem with anything creative is that it's subjective. Your mother will always love everything you do. Just be careful that your mother doesn't dictate your overall opinion of how things are going to be going. That's all. I'm sorry not to be more constructive, but yeah, I do get the occasional, what do you think of this? The problem is there are a lot of writers out there.
Yeah.
As there are a lot of actors, as we know.
Okay, back to you, Susan.
So, what would your dream what is your highest dream for where you feel like you want to go in life?
Well, it's interesting. I'm doing this play at the moment, and we're getting a lot of casting directors and producers and directors in, and you hope that somebody will see you and go, oh, you'd be good for that. To me, variety is the spice of life. What I would love is, to go and play a good supporting part. Or, I mean, I'm not going to say not to lead, but at my age, that doesn't necessarily happen. You want to work at the National Theatre. You want to work with the BBC. You want to work with the good directors, the directors whose work you've always admired, the writers whose works you've always admired. The realistic fact about the acting industry in this country is that doesn't always happen. You can be, I'm in this very peculiar position where I've been very, very fortunate to be playing this part for a very long time, which most actors don't get the opportunity to do. But it's in a tiny little niche compared to, the big stars and the big shows. And, and that Big Finish, of course, we work with the most wonderfully brilliant, talented, well-known actors. But I go to a casting and they won't know who Bernie Summerfield is. I can go to a convention with a lot of people in America and people go, oh my God, and it's lovely to hear. And then you want to say, tell my agent. So you have these little weird circles of, I suppose you could call them circles of fame, where you're lucky enough. I mean, a lot of actresses would never have had the opportunities I've had to do the stuff that I've done in audio. But at the same time, a lot of people in the BBC would never have heard of it. So in a way, every time you start, you have to start at the bottom again. So trying to explain to somebody at the National Theatre that I've been playing the lead in a series for 18 years, that's Toby Robinson. Hello, Toby Robinson. Another email. Oh, lots to catch up on. So trying to explain that to people who, they'll say, well, why don't you go and play a lead in that? You go, I'd love to. You tell them. I would love to work at the National Theatre. I'd love to work there. There are various theatres. There's one called the Almeida. There's one called the Donmar. They always do interesting plays. So my ambition really is just to keep working on interesting work. And at the moment, Big Finish really, really supplies me with that need in bucket loads. So I'm quite happy to potter along the way I am. And if somebody wants to, give me something else. I'm not going to say no.
Okay, back to you, Tim.
Well, we're thrilled to have you potter along.
Yeah, thank you, Susie.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, definitely. Okay, back to you, Tim.
Well, you recently appeared in a couple of Fourth Doctor adventures, which I believe were recorded years ago.
Yes, the casualties of time. Yeah. This is quite an embarrassing story, actually, because I was actually the transport for that day, and David said, "Oh, could you give so and so a lift? And if you do give them a lift, would you mind doing a couple of parts while you're down there and take some photographs? And can you do it?" So I sort of tick every box, so I can be transport, photographs, and a computer. So I went down and I worked with Tom, which was, of course, a joy. And how lucky am I? You don't get to. The only thing about being a photographer is you never get in any of the pictures with anybody. So I can't put up pictures on Facebook of me and Tom Baker, but I can say I took them. And he is a one-off, but a good one-off. I mean, gosh, look at what the kind of things he's done. We're so lucky to have got him, and again, the casts that all want to work with Tom Baker, so they get the most remarkable casts. And it was, I know you've probably heard it ad infinitum, but it was fun. It is fun.
Well, that was kind of my question. I mean, how often does that happen where you just get kind of accidentally roped in to do a part?
Well, quite a lot, and sadly on the things I direct as well. Generally, there will always be a computer voice, a guard, a secretary, any of those little tiny parts. And especially when it comes to Jago and Lightfoot, I will, end up with, they say, right, just 3 guests an episode, and then they add in urchin, policeman, shopkeeper, and you go, oh God. So you spend your life saying, okay, well, that person can double with this. You'll see that ubiquitous played by members of the cast at the bottom of the credits. We're very lucky. We've got a very good tradition of radio in this country. So there are lots of actors who you'll never know do one voice to another. And also there's a very useful thing called pitch shifting, which means that you can sound higher or lower, and you can do a kind of accent. And I personally prefer not to be credited in some things, because people do tend to roll their eyes going, oh, it sounds like Bernice, and it doesn't. It's just that people want to show off they know it's you. So that's my take on it. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. I think it's an economic decision more than anything else. But occasionally, yes, I'll come in. I've done a couple of bits on Torchwood, on Iris Wildthyme, on anything. I might not be credited, but I'll be in there somewhere.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, back to you, Graham.
Thanks, Brian. So you mentioned the National Theatre in response to Susie's question there. Is there ever a play or anything along those lines that you would like to be involved in at any point?
I'm a huge fan of the classics, whether it be Chekhov, Shakespeare. I'm doing what is, I suppose, called an old-fashioned play at the moment. It's a play in 3 acts. It's got a beautiful structure. It's got some beautiful dialogue. And frankly, anything with good dialogue is just... As an old tutor of mine at drama school said, the clues in the word are play. You can play it. It's like playing. And the idea of creating a character that is away from oneself, and if you're lucky enough to be in a great cast, it's a group sport. It's a bit like playing tennis, it's throwing the ball backwards and forwards. It's a bit of an old cliche, but it really is. And when you suddenly find yourself in this sort of game of throwing and catching, things can really get very exciting. And I think that's where the buzz of you as an actor, that's where the buzz comes from. So sorry not to be more specific, but any well-made play is a joy to do. And the same goes for television as well. I think sometimes television forgets the dialogue and goes for the scenery sometimes. But okay, I don't know whether the American and you guys in Australia know about a series called in this country called Happy Valley. That was on with an actress called Sarah Lancashire. It was the most remarkably, brilliantly dialogue drama that's been here for a while. And so anything that has got really well-made human stories. You throw it at me, I'll do it. I'll take pretty sloppy seconds. I don't care.
Well, there you go. As you said earlier, variety is the spice of life. You know.
Absolutely, Graham. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, back to you, AJ.
Yeah, when you did Jago, Lightfoot, and Strax, did you and Don Starkey would sit in the green room and just do your voices back and forth to each other, sort of thing?
No, I think we've done enough of that during the daytime, to be honest. No, the thing with Dan is that he is a master of voices. You throw any accent, any voice. I don't know whether some of you know, but it was either Oxford or Cambridge doing linguistics. So not only can he do the voices, he'll be able to tell you the historic base of every accent and every language known to man. So he is amazing. So if you're in any doubt about anything, whether it be pronunciations or languages, you've got to have Dan Starkey on the other end of the telephone. So he's just a joy. No, you stick him in front of a microphone and get him to do the job, really. That's all you really need to do with Dan.
Yeah, I met him last year at the Doctor Who Festival here in Australia, and he did a sample of the new and classic Sontaran voices for us.
Oh, you see, he knows these things. I need him. The good thing about Big Finish is there's always somebody sitting behind me in the control room who knows more than I do about the basis of every alien and how to pronounce their names and when they turned up. And yeah, amazing. And YouTube, of course, good old YouTube.
Okay, let's do one more round of questions because we're coming up on 90 minutes here. Yeah, the time has flown.
I'm afraid I will have to scoot off soon. So.
Yeah, and I know you're so busy, and I don't want to keep you too long. You know, unlimited meal. I'd love to keep you here forever. It's so fun having you on. It really is.
Thank you.
But I know you have a ton of things to get to, so let's do one more round of questions, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, so Susan, final question.
Okay, so you and your partner are both involved in the industry.
Yep.
Are you able to work together as much as you'd like? I mean, my parents have worked together for like 50 years or whatever. I'm just wondering if you're about that.
We work together really pretty regularly because he is also a regular at Big Finish. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mustn't do that too much. It can get a bit like, oh God, him again. But I'm glad to say that we do work together pretty regularly.
Okay, Tim. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Carry on, Brian.
Okay, I was saying, Tim, go ahead. Final question.
Do you get to do much stage work with being as busy as you are? And have you ever done any Shakespeare on stage?
Yes, I have actually. I did a play a few years ago, which was an interesting combination of Shakespeare plays. It was called Love Bites, and the actress stroke author had put together segments of the love stories of Shakespeare and put it into one show using the music of Duke Ellington, which was Such Sweet Thunder, which he wrote for Shakespeare plays, and that was wonderful. I absolutely love stage work, and it is absolutely no decision of mine not to do stage work. It's purely getting auditions. I have an agent who, for one reason or another, hasn't got me a lot of auditions. The play I'm doing at the moment is actually the first stage work I've done for 8 years, and that is all down to Hugh Ross. And I am eternally grateful to Hugh for asking me to do this play, because being back on stage, A, in a great play, B, with a wonderful cast, we're a very happy bunch of people, and hearing audiences laugh every night and being able to do that live, I think it's the ultimate form of acting. That weirdly in radio, because obviously it's just you and the script really. I do think stage work sorts the men out from the boys pretty much, and being back on stage is a joy, and I wish I could do more. I would say that being in a long run is very, very hard work. It is a bit like office work, 9 to 5 sort of stuff. But doing little limited runs is superb, and I love it. And show me a script and I'll see whether I like it or not. But doing this play at the moment is a joy, and it's lovely to be back on stage. Really is.
Okay, Graham, final question.
Thanks, Brian. Lisa, I'll go easy on you since it's the last question. Quick, simple, and to the point. Do you have a favourite movie or TV show?
A favourite TV show?
Or movie.
Or
Good
movie.
choice.
Oh, blimey. Oh, God, so many.
Pick three if you like, you know.
Oh, Lordy. I mean, I'm going to go old-fashioned and predictable and say The Third Man because I think it's a brilliant film. You know, the old black and white one. Nice film noir. And television, I'm a huge fan of Scandinavian dramas at the moment. And anything with a subtitle, basically. And there are two series I love. One, which is finished now, called Borgen, which was the Danish political one, and the French police series Spiral. And I think they're both absolutely corking. They're full of brilliant actors, great dialogue, and they're really engaging. So both of those will do me nicely for the moment. Oh, and also The Bridge. Sorry, you see, now you've opened a can of worms.
Now there you go.
So Borgen, The Bridge, and Spiral. Thank you.
Look out for the Danish House of Cards, folks. There you go.
I know. I've been told I've got to start. You see, I like the original, so I'm going to have to start the new one, aren't I?
There you go. Thanks.
Thanks, Graham.
Okay, AJ, final question.
Right. As an actor, who would you like to play against, fictional or historical wise, in a play, TV show, audio?
Oh, God. That's so difficult. I was always a huge fan of Katharine Hepburn's when I was younger. She was a very feisty lady. She was ahead of her time. And to have a scene with her where you could spar with her, I think would be absolutely brilliant. There are lots of actors. I mean, weirdly, it's not so much classical, comic actors. I tell you, it broke my heart to hear that Gene Wilder had died recently. I've always thought his timing, and he was sort of mesmeric. I would love to just watch and learn and do a little bit of a scene with somebody like that. You know, we're losing a lot of really wonderful actors at the moment. And if I could turn back time, any of those guys, they'd do me nicely.
I know we've remarked a number of times. Seems like the Reaper has just gone mad in 2016. It's crazy. Okay, so I'm going to go around one more time, just get final thoughts and farewells. Okay, so let's start with Susan.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I love Kara. I love you. I love the Big Finish stuff, and thanks for working with Nicholas and Michael. My heart throbs.
Well, they won't let you down, Susan. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah, thanks a lot for giving up a big part of your evening and sharing all this stuff with us, because we really are fans of what you do at Big Finish.
That's
so thanks
very
a lot.
kind of you, Tim. Thanks very much indeed. Nice to see you.
Okay, Graham.
Thanks, Brian. Always a pleasure to be here. We're so much obliged for your time this evening, and feel free to depart and take part in a drink of your choice.
No, well, Graham, it's lovely to meet you. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
AJ.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, Lisa.
Great, AJ. I'm even more impressed that you're in Australia. This is very impressive.
No worries.
And on behalf of myself, I can never thank you enough, because I know how incredibly busy you are, between the play, Big Finish, and all that. And I just hope that you're still able, to keep going for many, many years to come.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Brian. Thanks so much. I'm so glad that we managed to find a date.
Okay, so on behalf of myself and everyone out there, good night. Everybody take care.
Bye.
Bye.